Welcome to Fearless with Jason Whitlock. I am Jason Whitlock, your host. Happy Thursday. Awesome show planned for you today. Royce White in studio with us today. Round of applause. Awesome to have Royce here with us. We'll get into Royce and the big three. Perhaps, you know what? Actually, I think we're going to do that tomorrow. Royce is going to be here for 2 days. But Royce is going to help me as I talk with Tommy Sotomayor today about the manosphere. We'll talk with Steve Kim about the ESPY Awards, and that's where we're going to start today's show, talking about the ESPY Awards, a fire starter on that. Royce and I will discuss it, then we'll bring Steve Kim on for further discussion. So without further ado, you start pounding those likes, you start hitting the subscribe button, you start leaving a comment. If you're listening over Apple, give us that 5-star review. We deserve it. All right, let's get to the fire starter. ESPN, the worldwide leader in lies, seems rather determined to redefine and lower the standard for what constitutes courage. How else do we explain that in the course of 2 decades, the network's award for courage went from Pat Tillman sacrificing his life in military combat to a group of lying narcissists fighting for a pay bump? Courage ain't what it used to be. Wednesday night, the Disney-owned sports network labeled the U.S. women's national soccer team as courageous for its highly effective propaganda campaign to elevate player salaries. At its annual ESPY Awards, ESPN bestowed the Arthur Ashe Courage Award on the spoiled, greedy, and delusional soccer squad. Before taking the stage to smugly accept their award and embellish their arduous journey for equality, ESPN set the tone with a dishonest highlight video that smeared one of its former employees. Will Cain, now a talk show host for Fox News, was cast as a misogynist pig standing in the way of equal pay for female soccer players. Producers at ESPN edited an old soundbite of Cain talking on First Take. Take a listen.
Critics pushing back at them.
I think equal pay is a ridiculous concept in and of itself. Soccer, for better or worse, on the men's side across this globe is much more popular than women's.
Oh, we get that argument all the time.
So that's what they showed. The problem is Will Cain had much more to say. He explained that the salary and bonus pay for the U.S. women's national team is drawn from the revenue created by the Women's World Cup, which is around $130 million. The men's national team is paid from the revenue created by the Men's World Cup, which is around $6 billion. On a percentage basis, American women are paid astronomically more than the men. Furthermore, Cain rejects the idea of equal pay because he believes all people should get what they're worth. Take a listen to Will Cain in full context.
When you talk about, as Trevor Scales just laid out, the bonus difference between the men's team and the women's team, between what a winner, if it had been the U.S. men, would get in the World Cup and the women. The women got a pool, or got paid out from a pool of $30 million from the Women's World Cup. The men would draw from a pool of $400 million, okay? $400 million, $30 million. Why is that? It's because the Men's World Cup generates $6 billion in revenue. The Women's World Cup generates $131 million in revenue. If you want to talk about pay disparity, the Women's World Cup players get paid out 20% of the total revenue. The men get paid out 7%. As a percentage point, they are getting much more. The problem is, for anybody desiring equal pay, and by the way, I think equal pay is a ridiculous concept in and of itself. If the women generate more revenue, they should get paid more than the men. Don't strive for getting the same, strive for getting what you're worth. And if you're worth more, then get more. And so what I'm saying to you right now is soccer, for better or worse, on the men's side, across this globe, is much more popular than women's soccer.
The women's game had higher ratings than the men's, though. So what do you say to that?
Charlie, that's in the United States.
That was in the U.S.
And that's comparing a women's World Cup final that featured the United States against a men's World Cup final in the United States that didn't feature the U.S. team.
The sports world has completely reimagined courage in just 20 years. Last night's ESPYs were a low point for the Arthur Ashe Award. And yes, I'm well aware that ESPN previously handed the same award to a gay, late-round NFL draft pick, Michael Sam, and to Bruce Jenner for changing his name, style of dress, and pronouns. This is worse. Sam and Jenner at least risked ridicule. The U.S. women's national soccer team has been the toast of the American media since Brandi Chastain stripped to her sports bra in 1999. They're the most celebrated and entitled athletes on the planet. The penalty for questioning the outright lies they tell to line their pockets is expulsion from the mainstream media. To remain in the good graces of corporate media, you're required to pretend Megan Rapinoe and company faced fire hoses, police canines, burning crosses, and lived on government cheese to win a gold medal. It's all a lie. The lie is being propagated in hopes that WNBA players are successful in executing the same scam. Despite losing millions of dollars annually, corporate media continues to argue that the tall, tatted lesbians of the WNBA are worthy of massive pay increases and private travel. Anyone noticing a pattern? The lies all seem to serve the same special interest group. Brittney Griner, Michael Sam, Caitlyn Jenner, Megan Rapinoe, Lia Thomas, and on, all play for the Alphabet Mafia. Courage used to be about risking your life and/or livelihood in service to a cause with the appearance of nobility. Pat Tillman, the Arizona Cardinals safety, joined the military after 9/11. He thought he was defending America and avenging an awful crime. In January, former NFL running back Peyton Hillis nearly died after jumping into the ocean to save his niece and son from drowning in a rip current. Hillis spent 3 weeks in the hospital recovering. It was quite the act of heroism. But in modern society, that doesn't compare to a group of women using the media to blackmail the U.S. Soccer Federation out of $24 million. In the sports world, thanks to ESPN, courage is any act that empowers the LGBTQ, feminists, and the matriarchy. It's the longest running reparations campaign in the history of the world. Black people are the face of the American reparations movement. Gays and women are the actual beneficiaries. We've been convinced they're owed a debt. It's a lie. No country on the planet has invested more money in the development and safety netting of women than the United States. The return on that investment has not improved this country. It's only increased the number of people, groups, and identities seeking reparations. We're less educated, motivated, innovative, and more entitled, complacent, dysfunctional, immoral, and divided. We're fatter, lazier, and unhealthy. Men have been simping since the garden. Our entire existence has mostly revolved around satisfying the whims, emotions, and feelings of women so that we retain access to our favorite place on earth. If I have to ask you or have to tell you what that is, you're not meant to know. It's going to require Pat Tillman-like courage to fix the mess we created. Weak men must die. That death starts with the weak and unrighteous man in your mirror. That's my fire starter. Royce, I just see signs of this everywhere. Gays and women are running one of the greatest scams in the history of the planet on America, and it's been going on for more than 100 years. And we just keep pretending, and particularly as it relates to women, and then they roped in the whole LGBTQ crowd, that we owe them this debt, that I'm just sorry, I completely reject. Men have been more than fair with women, more than fair. We've been over backwards. And it's just, there are no positive results for this en masse. Have tall, athletic women benefited? Yeah. If you're some 6-foot woman, the world is better for you. The overwhelming majority of women aren't 6 foot. They're 5'4", 5'3", and they're not benefiting from this chaotic, immoral world that we've created.
The thing that sticks out to me the most is this is a communist agenda. This is a communist MO with the thin veil of capitalism to execute it. And the state and the corporation have come together behind the scenes in the quiet rooms, in the hidden rooms. They've come together behind the scenes to hijack women as a vehicle to forward this agenda, mostly at the expense of women. And it's hard for me to watch. I mean, I love women. I mean, I came from a woman. I came through a woman's womb. I have sisters, I have aunties, I have people who were in my life that were like mothers, aunts and other people like that. I love women, and no man in the manosphere, no man who's red pill, no Republicans, conservatives, Christians, whoever they want to say are the boogeymen, none of us want to see any harm done to women. In fact, I think the majority of the frustration from yourself or myself or many of the men speaking out against this movement is that it is clearly at the expense of women, both physically, but even more so psychologically, that women actually think they're benefiting from this movement. It is the greatest scam in human history. Women are being given the token of upward mobility. They've been given symbols of upward mobility that just have to be redefined tomorrow based on whatever else the establishment wants to gain. And right now, it's the women's vote, but even more so, it's the cultural submission of men. Right? I mean, everybody talks about in politics, like, you got to get this women demographic to win elections, presidential, Senate, Congress, doesn't matter, right? The women vote. The women is a powerful, the Time's Up movement, as Jeffrey Epstein would call it. The women have a strong hold. It's really not about that. And there's just as many men, there's, about 50-50. It's really about the unspoken cultural submission of men underneath this propaganda. And I see it all the time. And that's what makes me most upset, is to watch other men cower beneath this propaganda.
I go back and forth on who's getting harmed the most, women or men. And today, I feel like young men, boys are being harmed the most because everything America is doing is about promoting, lifting up, developing young women, and men and boys are being ignored.
I would disagree with that on this basis. Men are being harmed the most in a physical and material sense, in the material world, but spiritually it's women, because the men, regardless of the propaganda, regardless of the narrative that 5 out of the 10 men we know, maybe 8 nowadays, maybe it's 9, that's a scary proposition, but 9 out of the 10 men we know, even if they submit to the narrative culturally, there are things men have to deal with in the world that often bring them to a place where they have to encounter repentance, self-reflection, a more honest, version of human existence, which obviously involves God and the natural order. What they've created for women is a completely superficial bubble that all but excludes them from any real substantive spiritual life. In fact, the spiritual life that's been supplanted into the narrative is a complete fugazi. I mean, that's why every woman on Facebook is talking about how they're a vegan spiritual numerologist. I mean, so the spiritual aspect of it is a complete just all-out war on women, where, again, like we've talked about before, women really struggle with repentance, like at mass. And that is a herald of a dark endgame for them, for women. Men still repent. We slave away under the shadow of the propaganda, but we still repent because we're forced to.
That's a really powerful and fascinating point that resonates with me because I literally, just this past weekend, I was in a conversation that made me come to grips with like, wow, repenting isn't even a thought in a woman's mind. The whole world is telling her that you ain't done a dang thing wrong. And if these men, and you're right, as a man, I am forced, and we are forced to come to grips with our mistakes and repent. And I had, you've caught me off guard, as you a lot of times tend to do. It's an excellent point that spiritually what's going on is taking a greater toll on women because they're fooled. They're sitting, hey, we go to church. We're dominant in the church congregation and we're good. And it's these men that are struggling spiritually. But, you know, the whole concept of, let's say you're not going to church, but as a man, any self-aware man, he's doing some repenting, whether it's in the church, at home, in the privacy of his home, among his friends or whatever. He's having to deal with the consequences of his mistakes, whereas women are being told, girl, if there was just more of you in the world and doing what you're doing, this whole thing would be so much better. How do we get Oprah and Stacey Abrams in the White House? That'll fix it.
And when I say it's a communist agenda, I don't necessarily mean that it was a laid out communist plan that's been executed. Somebody wrote it down on paper, got together in a room. There's some of that, right? You can look at the Fed as one of the greatest communist scams in human history, the United States Federal Reserve. You can look at central banking as that. You can look at the inception of women being pulled into the workplace as a a political agenda. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the spirit of communism. I'm talking about the spirit of Karl Marx, the anti-God edifice of communism. And what it shows in this new corporate, which is really like a capitalist communist hybrid, how do we socialize the spiritual depravity of all women? Easy. We're going to tell women to triple and quadruple down on everything that's wrong with them. And we're going to reward that. And we're going to build an entire society that promotes that invites that embraces that. And if you don't embrace it or you don't invite it, if you push back at all, we'll call you a misogynist like they did Will Cain. And I thought the Will Cain example, again, there's certain examples that should just go out to every corner of the world. What the man laid out is ironclad science. I mean, real science. I mean, math is the universal science, right? We can go put a rocket ship on Mars. We can go live on some vegan habitat in the the Kuiper Belt or whatever these Judeo-Buddhist omnisexuals plan on doing. But we can't listen to the basic math of revenue share. It's plain. It's a $6 billion pool. They get 7% of it. The women are getting 2 times the share of the men. That is communism. And that is the dark horse of communism. Because there are some expressions of communism you could lay out and say, hey, I get it. The lowest amongst us must be brought up or they become a net drag on the entire collective. Okay. That's not the communism they're trying to run. And there's a serious reckoning coming from men now who are fed up.
That's a reckoning coming from men who are fed up. And that's part of the reason why I'm Tommy on, and we've been spending so much time talking about the manosphere. It's part of me thinks like, is it too late for a reckoning? Can we reverse course? We've gone so far. One direction is like, are they salvageable? And again, that's why I kind of ended with like, hey man, this weak man that we've all become has to die. Yeah. We have to, when I look at them redefining courage and what courage is, a group of women fighting for millions of dollars, that's courageous. And when now, man, this whole spiritual point is really magnificent because it so lines up with what I've been thinking for the past month about courage is defined by blood, man. Like I said this, I think on yesterday's show, anything you're not willing to die for, you really don't believe. And we don't even understand that. We don't even, that like, that's, I don't know if you've seen the movie The Sound of Freedom.
Yes.
That guy put his chips into the tape, risked his career, risked his life to back up. That's courage.
God bless him.
Yeah, Pat Tillman, what we did after 9/11 was wrong in retrospect, but he put his life on the line. Yeah. That's courage. And any person truly connected to religious faith and Christianity knows, like, yeah, we're saved by the blood of Jesus. And when they say the blood of Jesus, that man gave up his life. It's a life or death situation. The blood, we're saved by a man willing to give up his life. That's courage, not, oh, I kissed another man on TV and I'm gay and I'm a late round draft pick. Oh, look at that courage.
Yes. I mean, there's the difference between Pat Tillman's version of courage and actually going into combat. And I know many soldiers, many veterans, some my own age, some who are much older, and I respect what they did and the sacrifice they were willing to make. The contrast between them and these woke liberal athletes it's not even quantifiable, right? It's just two different universes. But I will say in the final analysis, I think we're coming to a place in this country which is relevant to the question you're asking me, is it too late, where the stakes are so high for our choices, right? Especially leaders, especially people who are charged to fight, who are charged with the duty of having sacred honor. The stakes are so high because of how much momentum has. My point is, Pat Tillman had courage in something that he believed he was doing on behalf of the country. But see, this is where Americans, even Christians, conservatives, Republicans, soldiers, right, preachers, whoever, don't forget about spiritual pride. Don't forget that Satan's fine with spiritual ego, right? And he's fine. And the net result.
Clarify that.
The net result of you believing that you're doing something courageous, if you were misled, is still the same as whether you didn't know, right? I mean, that was Adam and Eve getting tricked. I mean, Satan being able to trick you doesn't change the outcome in God's eyes, right? That it's still a show of a lack of faith. Yeah. And I don't want to compare Tillman to Rapinoe, but what I will say is the Judeo-Buddhist liberal, they use the exact same argument. They believe they're fighting on behalf of, they believe they're willing to die on behalf of something. Even though they've created a fictitious boogeyman and enemy, they believe it. You believe in a thing doesn't necessarily make it true, and it doesn't make it courageous. Whether a thing is courageous or not is based on its actual danger, its actual reality, its actual nature. And that's what they've tried to get away from, that we can create a narrative, and if you believe it, then it changes the reality. That's not true. The great example of that coming from the corporatocracy is perception is reality. No, it's not. That's one of those fundamental scams they got running real quick and everybody jumped on. Perception is reality. You'll hear a lot of black bourgeoisie radical materialists say that.
And so I get your point. Brianna Scurry, who gave one of the speeches last night, soccer player, she believes she really risked something by fighting for this
absolutely.
pay. And, oh, my God, I could have been run out of here. And Megan Rapinoe probably thinks her life's in jeopardy. And, oh, there's people out here that want to kill me because I'm pro-trans athletes and blah, blah, blah. And it's all delusion made up in their own mind. And I'm going to drag you into the conversation we had yesterday with Pearl. And just, this is why when people say, or when Pearl says, hey, I don't think women should vote, I actually go there with him and say, yeah, I can see why you say that, because they're capable of such levels of delusion that, and they drag these weak men into that delusion.
Yeah.
And into that, and just like you said, the Will Cain point is like, now here's just some basic facts. 6 billion, 130 million. How you gonna get the same pay when basically, but ESPN and all of the smart people that work there ignore that. They won't let, Will Cain basically got run out of ESPN because he wanted to actually talk about factual things. He had to move to Fox News in order and anybody, anybody that would want to come on and argue facts. And again, this is where I go back to the whole George Floyd thing and the whole myth that like, oh my God, if I step out here and I get pulled over for going 55, the police may kill me. That's what's offensive to me in terms of like, that's not reality. Can we just talk about reality? There's some truth about corruption in police force that we could talk about.
Yeah, for sure.
And let's talk about that. But no, we got to talk about this delusional stuff. And Royce, I'm really here with you. I don't know if I contacted you during the break, but man, I so now completely understand the Federal Reserve conversation.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's some like real corruption we could be talking about. That's high stakes.
Yes.
That's actually, because if we talk about the Federal Reserve, I don't know if you even know this. And
it's worth dying to stand against, like Kennedy.
And people have died.
They actually died.
Over it. Yeah. Did you know that there's people out here that believe they sank the Titanic because there's 3 billionaires on there that were against the Federal Reserve, and that's what's behind the whole Titanic sinking? Yes,
I've heard that theory. Wouldn't shock me. It wouldn't shock me at all, not one bit, not knowing who we're dealing with.
And dude, I watched some documentary about all the events that fed into Kennedy getting assassinated, tied to the Federal Reserve, tied to these endless, pointless the war racket. Some dude in the 1930s wrote some book, a general, that I think maybe it was Smedley Butler that wrote the book, War is a Racket. Yeah. This is coming off of World War I. He wrote this, that war is a racket. And then he squealed when Prescott Bush, the Bushes.
Daddy Bush.
Granddaddy Bush.
Nazi.
Yeah. Prescott Bush and others tried to get Smedley Butler, our most decorated soldier at that time, and other military people to overthrow FDR and to install a totalitarian government. Smedley Butler squealed on him and went and testified in front of Congress and squealed. And everybody, they called it the business plan. And so there have been people taking real risks and trying to stop this movement that has been going on for more than 100 years to get us where we are today. Yeah. And I got to sit around and pretend like a group of women wanting to get paid millions of dollars are the courageous people on this earth?
No, it's disgusting. Number one, this whole women gap argument is just a psyop. I'll give you an example of what it's really like. Spending time in the Republican Party now, I've come to understand what the Republican Party functions as. This is meant to do a head count of American citizens who want to be involved in grassroots politics and run them around in a circle or grind them into dust until they give up. That's what the Republican Party is functioning as in so many parts of the country. When it comes to human rights, basic fundamental human rights, which start with sanctity of life, right? We're going to take women and we're going to completely fabricate their reality around what it means to be an activist, or what it means to be a humanitarian, or what it means to be altruistic, or what it means to be courageous or stand for something, or principles or morals. We're going to completely warp everything that is a higher intellectual grasp of the human condition or the human existence. And that's what they've done. And by way of, they have access to all of our children. So you have a pro-LGBTQ, feminist, black trans rights, bourgeoisie, sellout movement that's pro-war, pro-abortion, pro-indoctrinating young kids. This is not a human rights movement. I mean, it's just not a human rights movement in any way, shape, or form. But the rest of us are meant to stand on the sidelines and let it perpetuate itself or promulgate itself or promote itself as a human rights movement. And really, you know, I ran into Stephen A. Smith when I was in New York City just recently, just at a car parking lot. I saw him and he nodded to me and said, "What's up?" So I said he had seen a few episodes of the podcast. And I started to think about Stephen A. Smith more closely after running into him. Because when you see a person in person, it just has a different effect on you, and you start to just reflect on them. Because other than that, I've only ever seen him on TV. And I started to realize that the real money grab, the real grift here, the Fed has done, has made everybody interdependent on this global economic scam. And under the face of that, they will give over to the women's scam if they think it means they'll stay in position to be able to carry on their economic vitality. I mean, it really is that deep. Everybody's tied into the money scam, and the best way to stay safe in the money pipeline is to do what women say. Happy wife, happy life, right?
So there used to be a saying, half the money and all the pee. Now it's like they got all the money too, or they got control of it.
Oh, I've been saying the cuck society for about 2 years now. Everybody gets funny when I say the word cuck. This is what we're talking about. Men have become cucked. I mean, we're neutered. And it's the few men. This is why they hate Donald Trump. And I don't mean to go political. This is why they hate Trump. Because Trump still has a big enough ego. He has a big enough set of balls to look at people and go, I don't really care what you think about me. I'm just not going to bow to women. And some of that may be out of a more, not such a spiritual place, a faithful place, but it's certainly what we need a lot of. And I think Kennedy's the same. I think RFK is the same in a lot of ways. All the men I think Andrew Tate is the same in a lot of ways. All the men who are popping up who are just outright saying, I reject the notion that I should bow to women on face value, all of them have become targets. And sooner or later, the Marxist movement will come door to door and put a bullet in every last one of them.
It's quite a prediction.
Well, one way or another, metaphorical or enjailment or censorship. It's 3 ways to skin a cat.
All right, we will lighten up the conversation by bringing Steve Kim on here in a second. But before I do that, I want to talk about our good friends at Preborn. It's my prayer that there will come a day when abortion will be abolished. Then we will look back and see the atrocity of what has been done. We're experiencing the impact of abortion in our lives, the breakdown of families, the trauma that comes from a woman being pressured to have an abortion, and the steep decline of morality that justifies this atrocity. How then shall we respond? Do we stand back and say, this too shall pass? Or do we rise up and say, I will stand for the innocent? Preborn stands for the helpless and the innocent because of your generosity. Preborn is able to offer free ultrasounds to women. Once she hears that heartbeat, the chances of choosing life more than doubles. And years from now, when your grandchildren ask you, what did you do about abortion, Grandpa, Grandma? You can say, I saved a life through Preborn. I saved many lives. One ultrasound is just $28 to save a life. Just dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby. That's pound 250 baby. Or go to preborn.com/Jason. That's preborn.com/Jason. You guys know this is very personal and close to me. When you do that, when you give, please drop me an email, fearlessblazeShow@gmail.com. Steve Kim.
It's my obligation, no hate, discrimination, raising up your hands for freedom. For freedom.
All right, so let's roll out to Los Angeles. Royce and I have been talking about the U.S. Women's National Team and their Courage Award that they won. They're redefining courage. Steve, Korean Cosell, what do you think of my contention that this is a bigger tragedy than Caitlyn Jenner even winning the Courage Award? What do you think of that?
Again, that's like asking, is gonorrhea worse than syphilis? How does your urine feel as it comes out? How bad does it burn? I don't know. Look, the ESPYs really peaked early on. And if I'm not mistaken, it was kind of done in honor of Jim Valvano, right? Way back, I think in the early 90s. And I still remember that incredible speech that Valvano gave about life and what it meant to him. It was funny, it was heartwarming, it was touching. And every once in a while, when you listen to it, it's very inspiring. And then I think it was Norm Macdonald or somebody had some skit, or he had a monologue where he just eviscerated everybody. And then it just became basically the sports award version of the white party, of any white party. It's just a bunch of elitists getting together, patting each other on the back, and now it's just become the official woke awards for the world of sports. So I mean, is it a tragedy? I don't know. I'd like to say that they're staying on script.
What did you think about what they did to Will Cain in terms of taking him completely out of context, acting like, he took some amazing shot and clearly distorted the truth to promote the lie that these women have somehow overcome these incredible obstacles and all this sexism and misogyny, and oh my God, what a journey to equal pay. Well,
to paraphrase that old phrase, lies, damn lies, and mainstream media. And this is why it is important that we now have other platforms. And I know Will Cain himself is a pretty big brand. He's really flourished outside of ESPN. He's done a great job. And I'm glad that now he has his own forum, whether it's just through Twitter, his own social media, or whatever platform he's on, to say, wait a minute, you took half of what I said. Because in the past, I believe these things can be so exploited where anybody, not just Will Cain, could be buried. But at least now Will Cain has a chance, and platforms such as yours, Jason, can say, wait a minute, that's not the truth. It ain't the whole truth. It's not even the half truth. But I have become so distrustful of the mainstream media and outlets like ESPN. And I'll be honest, Jason, 10 to 12 years ago, when someone said that, I'd be like, oh, God, you're being paranoid. Come on, that stuff doesn't go on. But it's hard to actually ignore that they do this. And there's no doubt about it. It is very, very purposeful. Nothing is done by accident.
Speaking of not an accident, the other thing that caught my attention at the ESPYs is Angel Reese, Breakthrough Player of the Year. She gets it over Caitlyn Clark. Her whole platform is based off of beating Caitlyn Clark. If there's no Caitlyn Clark, no one knows or cares who Angel Reese is. Let's watch her do her little John Cena thing, and she's towering with these heels on. She's towering over Kyrie Irving at the ESPYs. Let's watch this clip.
It's an honor for me to be here, up here with Kyrie, to help celebrate all the incredible things women are doing in athletics.
And it's an honor for me to stand here with the beautiful Angel Reese, a powerhouse in our sport.
Awards like this from our millions of young women across the country, you're in charge of your athletic journey, and you can do anything. They can't see you.
And here are the nominees for Best Athlete, Women's Sports.
And so that Best Athletes for Women's Sports actually went to Caitlyn Clark, but I don't think Caitlyn Clark was there, which I think was a smart decision on her part to get caught up in all that Angel Reese, whatever. But Breakthrough Athlete of the Year, I've never seen anyone capitalize more off of poor sportsmanship and taunting than Angel Reese.
Yeah, but it's all part of this virtue signaling. I saw a day or two ago that the ESPY's Boxer of the Year, and they had several really good candidates, and they chose a female fighter, Clarissa Shields, and I'm just like, oh, God. I mean, this is so bad that even in boxing, I see certain pundits in their pound-for-pound list, who's the best fighter in the world pound-for-pound. So there's Inoue, Terrence Crawford, Errol Spence, Alexander Usyk, guys of that ilk. And some people actually put in female fighters, and I'm thinking to myself, guys, none of these females could beat even the worst male fighters, and they'd be giving 35 pounds. I mean, literally, Clarissa Shields fought someone in her last fight, and she went the distance. She has like 15 fights, 1 knockout. And I say, the question that I have to all these guys, that when you have Clarissa Shields up there with all these other fighters like Crawford, right? I have a question. You think Terrence Crawford wouldn't knock out these females that Clarissa Shields is fighting? I mean, they're so divorced from reality. But again, this is what happens. My biggest issue with ESPN is that there's nobody there to at least raise a hand and say, wait a minute, guys, can we have an opposing viewpoint? Because then you're not allowed to. And they play the game that if you do not participate in this virtue signal Olympics, you don't rise up the ladder and you may not even have a job. So when people say, what was your biggest issue, Steve, with being at ESPN? It wasn't just the fact that you weren't allowed to have your own thoughts. The real problem became not the suppression, but I thought it was the forced indoctrination of other party lines that they absolutely make you have, or you have no future at that company.
Steve, before I let you go, I'm having your buddy Tommy Sotomayor on right after you.
I can't wait.
Tommy's coming on the show. You got any words of advice for me?
Yeah, step back and clear the lane. Let him have the ball. I mean, this is great. You know, Tommy's doing some unbelievable spaces. The man holds court. He's kind of like the modern day version of, I would say, Richard Pryor. I think that's a very high compliment. You know, I get worried, though, when I don't hear from Tommy on, like, Twitter, or I don't see anything pop up on YouTube. This guy's been banned a lot. I mean, it's almost like he's like Bin Laden hiding out in different caves, because it's amazing to me that the vitriol that Tommy gets, in a sense that, look, if you're saying that nobody but within your own community or color should be able to critique us, okay, you could say that Steve Kim should never critique anyone that's not just Asian. I completely disagree with it. I'm not going to play into that party line. Last time I checked, Tommy, well, he fits the bill, and the most vitriol he gets is from his own people. And I think he really does point out the hypocrisy of it all. Now, do I agree with everything Tommy says? Of course not. I don't agree with everything anyone says all the time. That's not the way it should be. But Tommy, to me, is a pioneer. I know that Kevin Samuels has gotten a lot of credit for whatever you call the manosphere or the red pill community. Tommy is one of the pioneers. He really is like the Christopher Columbus of this realm. And I cannot wait to watch this. I'm going to give this show 2 likes, not just 1. Not because only I'm on it, but Tommy. Oh, this is big. I mean, you know, your show has come a long way. Now, though, now, Jason, you are truly fearless. You have hit the Sotomayor front. I can't wait to watch this. Oh, this is going to be good. It's going to be good.
Thank you, Steve. Great job as always. As the presidential primaries get underway, it's crucial that the candidates address the issues that Christians care about. That's why I'm excited to tell you that Blaze Media is teaming with the Family Leader, a pro-family, pro-marriage, pro-life organization, to host the Summit, the first presidential forum of the election season. And here's the best part. The event is going to be moderated by none other than Tucker Carlson. Join us this Friday in Iowa as Tucker sits down one-on-one with each of the candidates to ask them the questions Christian voters want to hear answered. And when he's done interviewing the candidates, Glenn Beck will join Tucker on stage for an exclusive interview just for our Blaze TV subscribers. You're not going to want to miss this. So head on over now to blazemediasummit.com to subscribe and use the code SUMMIT for 30% off your subscription. Remember, you'll need to be a subscriber to watch Glenn's interview with Tucker, so go to blazemediasummit.com and use the code SUMMIT to save. Get your Fearless Army swag. Shop blazemedia.com/fearless. Tommy Sotomayor next. All right, welcome back. We've been talking all week about the manosphere. We had Pearl on, Pearl Davis, Pearly Things, which led to a discussion about the manosphere. She's the queen of the manosphere right now. And then we had a Twitter Spaces discussion about Pearl, and we had a surprise visitor to our Twitter space. Not really a surprise because he's come to other ones, but Tommy Sotomayor, who many consider the first mayor of the manosphere, one of the original guys in the manosphere. He joined our Twitter spaces, had some interesting things to say about Pearl and defending her. And so I just want to continue the conversation about the manosphere, not particularly Pearl. We may talk a little bit about Pearl, but mostly about whether the manosphere is a force for good, or is the manosphere a reinforcement of the delusion of man? And so, Tommy, without further ado, welcome to Fearless. I know Tommy has been upset that I haven't had him on Fearless earlier, and we'll get into that. But Tommy, I know many people are well aware of your background, particularly those familiar with the manosphere. But if you could give my audience a walkthrough, a little bit about your history as an internet content creator and one of the original guys using YouTube and the internet to talk about issues related to men.
Oh, well, first off, thank you for having me on here, Jason. And I started back in 2009, and I was doing this thing called Blog Talk Radio. And on Blog Talk Radio, what I used to do was simply talk about what I thought many people wouldn't talk about: men's rights and fathers' rights. And some of the things I said ended up going viral because the individual who I was dating at the time, I knew nothing really about YouTube. I didn't mess with it, didn't put stuff on it. But they would take clips of stuff that I had on Blog Talk Radio and put it on YouTube. And they started going viral. And then one of the first videos I did was called "The Type of Black Woman That Everybody Hates." And that video went viral. It was on World Star, and almost everything I put up would go viral. And that's where it all started.
And so you were basically in the Kevin Samuels lane long before Kevin Samuels, and taking a lot of heat and blowback from black women for being critical of black women. Accurate?
Yes, sir. As a matter of fact, I put up a video the other day. I showed people all of the messages I used to get from Kevin Samuels, who was a huge fan of mine before he started doing most of the talking points he got them from me.
So tell me this, Tommy. Honestly, and I was telling Royce this before the show, that this dude is one of the most talented broadcasters out there. I mean, you come on the Twitter spaces and you're brilliant. The stuff I saw from your previous work when I was on your show, you're a super talented broadcaster. Tell me why are you so obsessed though with tooting your own horn, or making sure that you state that everybody that moves into the manosphere actually stole all their material from you? It seems unnecessary and counterproductive to do that.
I don't say everybody stole it, but you brought up Kevin Samuels, and I wanted to point it out. If someone does something, I figure I'm like one of them pro-blacks who say that blacks created rock and roll. Are they obsessed with it, or are they telling the truth?
But I think people would be more apt to give you that credit if you didn't say it yourself. Because again, it's clear as day, just based on the record, you were there first. You're a super talented broadcaster. You're as talented a broadcaster as Rush Limbaugh or anybody else. Why have you been pushed into the background?
Well, that's exactly where it came from. When I would show up, I didn't used to say or toot my own horn at all. Never used to do that at all. But you got tired of you're doing your show and someone says, "You're trying to sound like Kevin Samuels. You're trying to sound like so-and-so." That became irritating. It would be like being James Naismith and you're saying, "You're trying to play basketball like so-and-so." You're like, "No, I created it." That it does get irritating if someone's doing that. And how did I end up getting pushed in the background? Well, if you build up something that tear down, whoever's going up slower than you, you build it up, they tear down. It looks like this. They tear you down, and the others don't get torn down. So you look like you are following them instead of the other way around.
And so you think it's all jealousy, no mistakes by Tommy?
No. I didn't say it was jealousy. I didn't even use the word jealousy. I don't think what happens is if I say something and I get knocked down off of YouTube, if they're saying something and they don't, well, theirs keep going up. So you forget about who started anything. You don't remember who is the first person who Antonio Meucci. No one knows that name. Tesla just came back because of Elon Musk. Most people don't know him. If you are the one who gets the credit for it, then the guy who created it usually won't. And if they're not alive, they definitely won't. So with me, the channels would go down, so the other people's channels wouldn't go down. If mine go down and yours don't, like most people can't even find me now.
And who do you think, though, who's pulling those strings? YouTube, big tech, the people in Silicon Valley, they're afraid of Tommy and would prefer that a Kevin Samuels or a Pearl Davis be the face of the manosphere?
Well, you have to look at it this way. Even when the whole manosphere thing started, I used to disavow them because I felt like they were like, I used to make the joke of I was Gizmo and somebody threw water on my back and they jumped off. Like I would start seeing them come up because I didn't create the manosphere, just like Jesus didn't create Christianity. I didn't create the manosphere. Those guys came after me saying the things that I was saying, but a lot of times they would bastardize it and they would make it to where, wait a minute, I didn't say that. And they were quoting me and I was like, I didn't say that. That's not what I meant. So it wasn't like I'm walking around saying I created it. I never did. Even when I heard the term manosphere, I was like, what is that? They were like, those guys exist because of you. They're taking your talking points. I was like, but I didn't say that. So that's where that all happened.
Is the manosphere a good thing, or does it perhaps feed the delusion of men that the problems we're seeing in the world are all the fault of women and not our fault?
And see, that's another interesting thing. I always blame it on, I say, well, you can talk about what the women are doing, but it's your fault that it's happening. It's almost like being a parent. So the reason I disavowed the manosphere, because I said, you would have a lot of men listen to someone say high value man, but those men weren't high value men. It was just for them to be able to say that women, y'all should be with me because of, and that's not the case. I don't believe in telling women that they should be with you, in spite of. Like, you have all these problems, but they should still want to be with you because you're a man. We're selling sometimes things to people and not even asking them what they want. So if I had to say if it was a good thing, yes, it's a good thing that certain conversations are being had, but I definitely believe it feeds to the delusion of men, because it's a lot of men who are saying things and they don't fit the picture. It's almost like saying a woman who's saying, I'm a queen, I'm a 10, I'm a bad B, and she's a 3. But once you start letting all of them say it, then they're all going to say it, and you're never going to be able to reel that back, which is where we are now.
What do you think the message of the manosphere should be? Who is anybody out there doing it right? What would you like? What conversations need to happen to move things forward in a positive direction?
I'm scared to watch other people because I'm a sponge. Like a lot of people, I remember D.L. Hughley used to say that I sound a lot like Bernie Mac. Well, I watched a lot of Bernie Mac. Well, I guess that would be how I would sound a little bit like him. I'm old school. Robin Harris, Richard Pryor, Eddie Murphy. Those are my guys. So you will hear me and I will say things that sound like them. Since I'm a sponge, I try not to listen to too many people. So whenever these people pop up, I don't even know them. But it seems like when the guys start talking, they talk from someone else's experience and not from theirs. And I think the one thing that I believe is pulling it back is everybody's jumping in it, looking at it now as a vehicle for money. So it's not people who have a real gripe. It's people who see, hey, I can get some money off of it. It's like what you guys were asking. Is it a grift? Most of it is, to be perfectly honest. So it's hard to get bogged down in the minutia with them, because whenever you try to have a real conversation about something, they're spitting talking points that they got from somewhere else or don't even know where they got it from. You don't know how many times I've had people talk to me and repeat what I've said. And I had to sit there and listen to them. And I'm like, you're talking to the person who came up with that, right? You? Yes. And that's not what I meant when I said it, right? Or this is where you get the information from. So that's, to me, is a sad part. People aren't really doing their studies on what they're talking about. They're speaking about it from who said it. And I'll finish it with this. I grew up in a church. And when I was little, there was this song they used to sing. There's a lot of them like that. And the song used to go, how would it go? It would go, they would say something, and then everybody in the church would repeat what they were saying. When I was little, I didn't get it. I said, oh, the deacon is saying something, and then they're repeating what he's saying, but they're just singing it. And he'll say, there's a cross for everyone, and there's a cross for me. And then the crowd will go, and there's a cross. And I was like, so you don't have to read the book. You just listen to what the pastor says. And then as I grew up, I remember someone told me, it's like the Bible says, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. And I said, but the Bible doesn't say that. Well, a lot of people repeat what they heard more than what they know. And in the South, that is a big thing. And so I guess once I got to a certain point, I started realizing people are repeating what they heard, but not what they know. And I wish more people would be scholarly about what they hear to go and find it. And I think that would push the conversation forward so we wouldn't start spitting out things that were untrue.
You've taken me to a point where I feel like I have to ask you, you somewhat strongly defended Pearl in the Twitter spaces. I'm wondering now, for a fuller thought, do you think Pearl is someone that's just basically repeating other people's talking points?
Well, yes, I think a lot of it is, I defended the idea of what she was going through, which is if someone's attacking you, why are you going to talk to them? That would be kind of silly because they're trying to make you look bad. Most people don't go into conversations having a good faith. Even if you think you know something about someone, let them tell you so you can then check them on what they say. And so that's what I was saying. But a lot of what she's saying is stuff that either already has been said or something that's going to, it's triggering. It's purposely triggering to people. And the sad part about it is women are easily triggered. So it's easy to do it because as a man, you know this, if they say black men need to take care of their kids, even if you take care of your kids, you're not going to jump up and say, I do it. You will actually agree and be like, yeah, there's a lot of brothers that need to take care of their kids. You don't get offended. Women will get offended at certain things, and it's sad to see them do it. So it's one of the easiest targets to just get them riled up. Well, but think about it. 70% of all ad dollars are spent going towards women because women have these insecurity issues. So if you say something about them, they're going to jump up to defend themselves. And society is now telling them everything they do is right. So they definitely have a reason to defend themselves. Look at what's going on with Jonah Hill. He's being misogynist. He's being controlling. But if someone tells you what they're willing to deal with and what they're not, doesn't that sound like a woman? Women tell men all the time what you have to do to date them. And if you're not willing to meet it, don't date them. We've never went away and said that woman's controlling. But now that's actually what they're doing. They're going back in men's history. So because they're that insecure, they're easy to poke.
Royce, he said a couple things that seem to have caught your fancy or you agreed with. Am I right?
Yeah, I love what he's saying. I love this guy. Yeah, I mean,
I like his beard.
Tommy, I'm just telling you, this guy is brilliant. He's a skilled broadcaster. But as I told you before,
it's about to give me a backhand compliment. He do it all the time.
Yeah. You're undisciplined. You're undisciplined, and so I look at you and go, man, this dude should have been Andrew Tate for America, but, minus the, well, I can't even say minus, but should have been Andrew Tate. Yeah, should have been Andrew Tate, but the lack of discipline, you put banana peels in front of yourself with some unnecessary fights, not playing above. It's like, I look at the scrap you went back and forth with Kwame Brown, and I just didn't get it. It made no sense to me why you would be arguing and fussing with Kwame Brown.
But it made sense that Kwame Brown would be arguing with me by that logic.
Yes.
So it made sense that Kwame would argue with me, but it didn't make sense that I would argue with him?
Absolutely.
Please explain that to the world.
Kwame Brown, because Kwame Brown's not as skilled a broadcaster or as brilliant as you, and I don't say that to be dismissive of Kwame Brown, but as a broadcaster, he doesn't have your skills. And so there's a lot of people that pick and fuss at me that I completely ignore because it ain't even, they're not on my level. And so why would I roll around in the mud with them when I could just put out my own content and keep it moving, and everybody would ignore or just forget about them because my actual talents would so outshine their lack of talent that it would make them irrelevant. And again, I have respect for Kwame Brown, but I also am smart enough and have heard enough from you to be like, this guy is a brilliant broadcaster that knows a lot, and he's wrestling with a NBA player that's out on a tractor or in a car taping videos, just saying stuff, not off the top of his head, but it was completely unnecessary, and to me it distracted from people being able to see the substance that you have to offer rather than seeing you wrestle around and have a petty feud with someone who's just an up-and-comer.
Well, people forget that I knew him before he became what he was. And when he started taking shots with me, then I took him back because at that moment, you have to remember exactly what I said. They're knocking me off of all of social media. So they knock me down. I have to start back over again. So if you already have it, it's the same reason that you will bring people on your show. Conan, when he had a show, Jimmy Kimmel, all of these people. Pearl came on your show. Had Pearl not had a name, Pearl could actually go away next week. She could go away next year. You would forget all about her. But because she had a name, you brought her on. So if he has a name and he's got all these people looking at him and they've already knocked my stuff down, and then he's repeating it. Like there was one thing he repeated word for word, and it was hilarious. Everybody was like, oh, it's such a good speech. And I said, he literally repeated. I had this thing called Resting on Somebody Else's Laurels. And it's a beautiful song. I'll play it to you one day. People love that song. But he repeated it in one of his speeches, word for word. And everybody's like, oh, that is so right. Why haven't we done this for Black Wall Street? And it goes viral. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh, come on. So after a while, you start saying, well, I got to use that vehicle. If that person is using me, then I will use them. So that's what it was. It wasn't like it was even with me. I didn't even really care about it. It was, I'm starting over and over again from the bottom. So if you do something and you're using my name, I'm going to make sure, like Corey Holcomb. Corey Holcomb did a show the other day. I haven't said anything about Corey Holcomb in years. I never said anything about him. He was talking to Boyce Watkins and Willie D. Out of nowhere, he brings up my name again. And when he brings up my name, he tells a complete lie. Tommy was trying to talk to my wife and get my ex-wife on his show. I don't even know who his ex-wife is. People who use me or use something I say. And so I guess I can either not say something and you'd be right. Or I could say something. I think I'm one of those people. I always said I'm not a good leader. Because with me, if you say something, I'll say something back, whether you're this big or this big. I grew up like that. I guess I grew up a fighter. And so I always say something back, which isn't a good thing. I will say that it is not a good thing because some people you should just let not be able to get you off your square.
Yeah, look, I consider myself a fighter, but I don't want to say I'm Floyd Mayweather, but it's like I'm going to pick the right fights and the fights that are going to put money in my pocket. I'm just not going to fight anybody. You referenced Corey
When
Holcomb.
his numbers went down, I stopped responding to him. I don't respond to him no more. He says my name, I don't respond to him no more.
But you referenced Corey Holcomb. I used to be friends with Corey Holcomb. And Corey Holcomb is a guy that loves to talk about me. I don't pay attention to it. I mean, he says a lot of ignorant things about me. I've never paid attention to it, never responded to it. Because and Corey Holcomb's got a nice little following. He does well on the Chitlin comedy circuit, and I don't say that to be dismissive, but that's what he's built a nice little, probably $500,000 a year career going around to little ghetto nightclubs and doing his comedy routine. I'm perfectly good with that. And he can lie about me and ridicule me and all that other stuff, but in my lane, for what he can't hurt me in any way.
Well, that's why he keeps picking at me, and I won't respond to him because I know I'm like, I saw where you were. I went to LA. I was out there and watched you inside of a what do you call those, the storage unit. I'm good. I'm not arguing with you, and I won't. But he still keeps trying to pick an argument with, and I find it funny. But you're right. This idea of some people, I just don't touch him because it's not worth it. At the time, he was worth it. And now he's not, like with Kwame Brown. At the time, he was worth it. He's not now. One thing I did try to do, and I will say this, because we were friendly before, he would ask me for advice on what to do, of how to go viral, and I would tell him. So that became a bone of contention with me. And it was more of, man, I'm hurt that I helped you. And then you turned on me that I helped you, that I didn't understand. So I think that was more of what that was. Of if you help me, it would kind of hurt you if I just start attacking you. You'd be like, wait a minute, I put you in this spot.
I've lived long enough, and again, it's not, I don't want to sound like I'm perfect because I have these conversations off air, like, man, what should I do? But I've lived long enough that I almost expected that there are going to be people that you help. And one, again, it's like you create little welfare kings or queens. And when you take the welfare away, they become bitter and complain, and you're the worst person on the planet. I got a dude right now on Twitter that, for several years, helped him just out of the kindness of my heart and just out of sincere interest and respect. Dude, I'll call him by name, Curtis Schoon. Used to come on the podcast with him, politicking or whatever, blah, blah, blah. Never did anything bad to Curtis Schoon. Nothing but help. When I quit giving him help and moved on to doing what I want, he then makes me a target and I'm the worst person on the planet. So, this is the way of the world. And so did I have conversations away from like, man, should I respond to this? Blah, blah, blah. And go, nah, just, irrelevant and don't do it. And does it bother me a little bit? But I'm 56. Tommy, what are you, 45?
7.
Okay,
47.
I'm just telling you, man, it's you got to let these people go and roll. They're irrelevant. They're
I
not
agree with
going
you.
to.
One of the problems with me is I take almost everything personally. You have to remember all this stuff that even happened to me was shocking. The whole idea of it blew up. I didn't go into this as a business. It was something that I was doing that became a business. I went into it. I was just speaking something I thought. I came from my IT background. I spoke something that I knew was correct, is what I thought. And I was doing that. And so when it became all these people either want to be like you, be with you, or take from you, that was all new to me. I had never been a celebrity at 20, at 25, at 30. I was not. So this was all new. So I handled things like I handled my personal life. And I was called when I was younger, and probably now. They would say this word, I don't know if you're Southern or not, but they say, you got a tender D, because I would fall in love easily. You know what I'm talking about.
You know why that's hilarious? That's one of my mother's favorite. That's one of my mother's favorite criticisms. That was what she called my father.
Or fall in love easy.
I can't do
Oh, my mother watches.
Yeah,
My mother watches this. She gonna fall out laughing because, cause my father left my mother, and they got divorced or whatever. And my father, I got married 3 times, and my mother was always like, "Yeah, he's tender dick, Jason. He dips his stick, and he gonna fall in love." And my father would totally disagree with that. But anyway, Tommy, go ahead.
See, I'm overly honest, and I think that's why people like me, because I will call myself out. And that is a problem with me. I love hard. And if I'm your friend, I give you everything. If I date you, that's why there's no woman has ever come out, how old as I am, and all the things that people can say. If you notice, there's not been one woman that came out and said he didn't treat me well. There's not been one, and that should be amazing to everybody, because there's been a lot of things said about me. The most criticism I get from women I date is, he gave me too much, so I'm going to get out and tell the public that you gave me, which is a weird diss, but that's what it is. So I take things personally because I don't see it as business. And you're right. I need me and my cousin, he talked to me, he said, what you need in your life is what kind of language can I use? I'm not going to be, he would say you need a
Say what?
Okay, he would say you need a no. You got too many yeah.
You did. You said the one word that I'll say whatever you want, but not that word.
Instant karma.
Go.
See, you should have got to tell me what the third rail is.
That's my only third rail.
You got too many people. You need a guy that will sit there like what you said you have, that you can call them and say, hey, should I do this? And they say no. Me, it's all me, so it's a reaction. And you get a real world reaction. Be quick.
You've made an argument that I agree with, and I certainly struggled with when I was younger. And I start to think of myself, and one of the points you made is like, hey, in your 20s, you weren't a celebrity, in your 30s, blah, 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 and then it comes about and you don't know how to deal with it. And I'm sitting here going, well, hold on, I was the most popular kid in my high school, captain of a nationally ranked high school football team, college football player, and then moved into this journalism career. And very early in my journalism career, I became a public figure and a celebrity. And so I had a lot of experience, and I had a lot of betrayal that I did not handle as well in my late 20s, mid 30s, as well as I do now. I did go through a learning curve and figure it out, because that's why I laugh now when I pull away from people or go a different direction. I can't even say pull away, but just like have to take care of me, and like there's no welfare for me to give. And when these people turn on me, I just laugh and I go, man, this happened to me at 28. There was a white dude in Kansas City, Missouri, when I first got there as a columnist at age 27. They used to fax. This was before email. He would fax in a critique of the newspaper and of me and everybody. And I found it entertaining. And he lived in Kansas City, knew the sports scene better than I did when I first got there. And me and the guy became friends because I enjoyed the things he faxed in to the newspaper so much. And I ended up helping him get a job at the Kansas City Star. He had some writing talent. And I got him a job at the radio station I was working at. I went on vacation, on a cruise somewhere on a vacation, gone for 2 weeks. When I came back, the radio station had fired him. And when I came back, and they only hired him because of me, and he thought I should demand that they give him his job back. Well, when they explained to me what he did and why they fired him, I was like, ain't nothing I can do. You acted a fool. You did this and that. Because of that dude instantly turned on me and became my biggest enemy and critic and devoted a solid 10 straight years trying to bring me down. And I was friends with him and his wife. I had dated his wife's best friend. And I'm like, this dude completely turned. And it did hurt me at that time, but that experience prepared me basically for the rest of my career. And that's why I look at things now. And when I see people respond poorly, it's part of the process. And Tommy, I say all that to say, Tommy has wanted, and I don't say this in a way to diminish Tommy, but Tommy's made it clear via text to me and conversation that he wanted to come on the show. I was apprehensive about bringing Tommy on the show for a long time because it's like, man, Tommy beefs with everybody. and like, Tommy seems like the kind of guy that, like, if he don't like the way things goes, he's going to be talking about me and, going off. And so I just like, I'd rather not. That's the sincere explanation, Tom. That, and because when I came on your show, Tommy, and I'm just keeping it 1,000% real, I came on your show and I asked you several times, like, man, what do people have a criticism about you about? What do you do that, makes people uncomfortable? And it wasn't until after the show, you didn't tell me, people started DMing me on Twitter and Instagram saying, Tommy got an OnlyFans with pornographic material on it. And I'm like, what?
No, see what happened was, if you can't broadcast anywhere, that was the only place that would allow me to broadcast. And then they went and flagged that from me broadcasting. How is it you can't broadcast on OnlyFans? How you get flagged down there?
Got it. But Tommy, just I don't know if you know much about this show, but we express a biblical worldview, and I'm taking a risk here. Like, this dude got an OnlyFans, and I'm bringing him on this show. But I wanted to talk about the manosphere. Trust me, there's a lot of shadiness in my past. I talk about it all the time. There's some strippers that could come out of the woodwork on me, but I've already copped to it. It's all true. Whatever they say, it's all true.
Slow down.
I don't have any of them.
I agree.
Too far.
I don't have any of them.
That's a joke. Because again, you know what they can say? The same thing they said about Tommy. Man, he was so generous. That's the full explanation, Tommy.
No, and listen, but people don't point out, and that's what I think is so disingenuous. Like right now, they'll say, you struggling, you've been banned on OnlyFans. And you've been banned on YouTube, and you've been banned like Twitter. I had a Twitter that had over 300,000. Now I'm at 3. I got to keep sneaking back on. Can't even see family on Facebook because they found my Facebook and flagged my Facebook. So you flag me down everywhere, and then you talk crap about me being on a platform because that's the only one would let me broadcast. That doesn't make sense. It would be like making sure I get fired from my job and I can't pay my bills. Then you come by talking crap because I'm living on the street. I'm living on the street because you literally got me fired from my job. And that's what people are doing.
Was he doing porn on the OnlyFans, or was he just putting his podcast up on OnlyFans? Was he podcasting while he was having sex?
Podcast.
Tommy.
It was a podcast.
Tell the truth.
It was
Tell the truth.
Listen, I'm telling you, that's what it was. It was the podcast. Now, was it some cheeks being beat every now and again? Sure, but that was because of what was going on the podcast.
And that's Tommy, this is my whole point, Tommy. You're making my point. There's no way somebody with your broadcasting skills and intellect should be posting that kind of content on any website. If you were a mediocre broadcasting talent, I would get it. But you have next generation broadcasting skills, and you dirtied it up with, again, I talk on this show all the time. I'm a talented journalist, and I dabbled in trouble and danger, but there were lines I wouldn't cross. I would be at parties, and when the coke and dope showed up, deuces, I'm out of here. Yeah. I can't cross this line. I'm not gonna call his name.
But think about it. I've never crossed that line. I've never done any drug.
Well, there's just, and I was joking when I said believe anything, because there's only so much anybody can say about me, because I was always respectful. Like, I got a career, I got family to take care of, I got myself to take care of. I have this unique talent that there's only so far I can go. And I am a believer and a Christian. There's only so far I'm going to go. I'm not going to let my lust or lack of discipline carry me to a place where it undermines my career. And so me and my best friend fell out for a long time because through a bachelor party, I was the bachelor party king. I got guys that would love to get divorced and remarried just so I could throw them a bachelor party. But one of my friends was like, man, if we just had some Coke. I was like, you talking to me, bro? Really? And it just loved the dude. Love him like a brother. But it's like, wow, man, you asking me to throw my whole career away. You know, there's certain things I can survive. Hey, Whitlock is out in Vegas and they're at a strip club, blah, blah, blah. I can survive that. But once they say there's Coke involved, I'm done. And so Tommy got me taller. But I talked about all this previously. Tommy, that's what I'm just saying. I don't know if, and again, you weren't prepared for this. It doesn't sound like you went to journalism school. You probably weren't even, when you were young, even aware of how talented you were and are, and you lacked that perspective and needed a mentor, in my view, and you'd be in a much better space.
Well, here's the thing. When someone says you'd be in a much better space, it's the equivalent of asking a person, again, who you got fired from everything they do. And now you're complaining about what they're doing to keep their lights and their bills on and their bills paid. Because that's what y'all are talking about. You're saying you're much bigger talent. Well, you had a job and you weren't trying to ruin it because you were doing coke. But there's a lot of people who lost their job and they were on the streets who started selling coke, who started selling certain things that they probably wouldn't have done had they had another avenue or another thing that they could have done. My mother talked about that. She said, I'm a pastor now. She said, but when I was younger, I was just a young woman with kids trying to put food on the table. Am I proud of everything I did when I was young? No, I'm not. But I'm not going to let anybody make me feel bad about stuff I didn't have that I went out to try to get. And I'm telling everyone, I wasn't on NBC, ABC. As a matter of fact, I had gotten so down that I wasn't even on YouTube. I couldn't even be on Mixer. I couldn't be on anything. And so when you can't find me, you can't say I lost something or he hurt something. He knocked something down. He didn't have it. They took it. You didn't see me doing it when I had YouTube. You didn't see me doing anything. I was just saying what was true. And you go out of your way to put somebody in the homeless shelter, and then you turn around and say, well, I would have never done that to get out of it. Well, there's a thing. You go look at what the Russians did. There were many Russians during the famine. You know what they turned to? Cannibalism. How about you go look at what happened with the with the people that crashed in the airplane in the Alps? You know what they ended up doing? Eating each other. You know what a lot of black folks ended up doing? Eating things they wouldn't eat now during slavery. Whenever people tell you what it is that they wouldn't do, it'd be different if you saw me sitting on an ivory tower and I just decided to just jump in the mud. Did that happen? No, it didn't. Again, I couldn't even broadcast anywhere. So when someone asked me what I did to pay bills I had created myself, I paid them. And they may not like it, and I may not like it. But you know who do? The people who I made sure was okay so they didn't have to do it.
Royce, stand in the gap for me here. I'm still processing my reaction to that. Because I'm certainly someone that believes any man is capable or woman is capable of anything. Yeah. So I agree with that sentiment, but I want some additional time to think here.
Yeah, I mean, well, he's talking about the human condition. I think it's a very valid point to consider about all walks of life, not just people who create content, but trying to consider what people are capable of. Many people are victim of circumstance. And again, I've said this on the show before, we get caught up in the time span of our life and how things unfold or occur in our life. But if you think about the metaphysical and God, the one true living God, things don't occur rational to us as they do to God. So there are people whose lives become victim of circumstance in this greater plan that God has, or this greater thing that God has at work that wouldn't make sense to us. And we go, why would you do that? But it works out in the end for God, right? And you can see that biblically, right? Did King David, did God want King David to covet Bathsheba and no?
Amen.
And David paid a toll for that, right? His first child, his child with Bathsheba died, and then they went on to have more children. So, there are things that people do, I think what he's trying to say in circumstance that it's unwise to look at when you've never been in that circumstance and say, I for sure wouldn't do that. Now you could say with good certainty, I believe I wouldn't do that. But to have a sort of judgmental approach and say, I for sure wouldn't do that is unwise. I would agree with that.
Okay,
Especially
so
when
I
someone-
certainly, I'm sorry, go ahead, Tommy.
Oh, I was going to say, especially when someone says, oh, I went here. Well, that could look bad, too. If you're a Christian and you're sitting there throwing the best bachelor parties on earth and you got a bunch of women, but we don't do drugs. Well, there's somebody who could look at that and say, well, I wouldn't do that either, especially when you talk about it with the glee that you do. They might say, you don't even seem very remorseful about it, but I will give you a perfect example. Most of us would believe that we would not deny Jesus if we knew Jesus and saw everything that Jesus said. Matter of fact, let me tell you who said that they wouldn't. Paul. Or was it Paul and Simon? Simon said, no, I would never deny you.
Paul and Simon, aren't they the same?
Yeah, he changed it. Not
Peter
in that, but he did change his name.
Go ahead. You're right. You're right.
Yeah.
Peter and Simon.
So what he said was, I'd never do this. And Jesus tried to tell him, what I'm going to go through, you're not going to be able to go through it. See, I will go, and even Jesus knew when it was only in one book where he said it, where he said, hey, take this cup away from me, because I don't want to do that. But he knew that human being, when faced with death and seeing with the punishment they gave him, he'd deny him real quick. And he told him, not only are you going to deny me, you're going to deny me 3 times. And when he saw what they were doing to Jesus and what they were doing to the other followers of him, he said it'd be better for me at this point to just lie so I can get away than stay here and be let me say it, and die. And he cried over it. He repented. And guess who they ended up building the church on? Him. So even though he did what he did, and even though he was a killer, or what about the guy who persecuted the Jews and then ended up being
he's about to get some smoke in you're going to get some smoke in the chat right there saying that they built the church on the rock of Peter. We've been down that road before, but I like this guy. Though.
The guy's great. Tommy's great.
What I'm saying is, you put somebody in a certain position. I have people who depend on me and I depend on me. And it got to a point where I'm going to make sure I eat. And if I'm not bothering you and I'm not hurting you, it can hurt your sensibilities, but I'm going to eat. I can't worry about your sensibilities when I'm hungry.
I want to give an example to try and bridge a gap. My own experience, right? When I was blackballed from the league, for example, and I'm going to all of these different media outlets, whatever media outlets would allow me to tell my story in whatever fashion they would. And I'm, in the room dealing around and moving around with institutions that I know in my heart are corrupt in totality, but I'm still trying to measure being able to get my story out because of the thing that I'm going through personally. And it's a tough act to balance. And there are things that I said or things that I did or just a general way that I carried myself at the time at 21, getting on the national global stage to speak out about a global issue with one of the biggest, most influential corporations in human history, in the NBA or professional sports. And there are things I can look back now on and say, I would have said this differently. Like when I was on Don Lemon, I had a chance to go on Don Lemon at the time. Number one, now I probably wouldn't be invited on Don Lemon, much less would I go on there under specific guidelines because I know how that would end. But when I look back at the interview, I go, I wish I would have said this, or I wish I would have had this in mind, or I wish I would have. So I think when you're blackballed, or when you feel like you've been outcast by the society, it creates that resent. Number one, a valid resent. Not a superficial resent, a real valid resent, and it causes people to lash out and do things that sometimes they wouldn't do. Now, would I say, or do I believe that a strong faith could curtail some of that? Yeah, but there are people in the Bible who showed wrath and rage and resent, and they later on repented for it as well.
So I think both of y'all have used this word, and that's where I'll land on all of this. Repent. And Tommy, I don't know if you did it intentionally, but I want to make sure the audience that watches regularly knows this, and I don't have to say this for them, but I just want to enter it into the record. I'm not proud of the life that I used to live, and on this show, I talk about it constantly as a reminder and as a warning to younger people that you think there's all this happiness in sexual lust and fulfillment, and just, hey, this is what you should be doing. This whole show is basically predicated on me daily repenting for many of the mistakes that I made when I was younger and more out into the world. And I'm not saying this to pat myself on the back, but the decisions I've made, the road that I have chosen, there's less gold on this road than if I had stayed the course with what I was doing. That road would have been paved with $10, $12 million a year. And part of my repentance and backing up my repentance is walking away from that road and confessing and repenting continuously on the show, publicly, privately, in conversations with God and Jesus, in prayer. And so that's what I always think the option is. I understand you and you say, hey, look, there's things I had to do to stay afloat, and I'm not going to, I wouldn't say you're saying, you're not being super defiant, but you don't want to be shamed for it. And I'm not sure if I want you to be shamed for it, but I do think you should repent, and you should come into an awakening of like, hey man, you were gifted a special talent. It's unfortunate that it took you time to realize it fully and completely, but you really were gifted with a special and there's still time for you to utilize that talent and exploit that talent in a way that will meet your financial needs, I believe, and push men in the culture in a better direction.
But even when you ask things like that, it's like my mom, I don't think she wants to have the conversation every day. She's a pastor now. She's doing what she's doing. I don't think she wants to have the conversation every day when somebody walks up to her and tell her, well, you know, your kids got different daddies. I don't think she wants to just keep, and then somebody tell them, well, you should repent. And you're like, do you know me? Have you asked me? I mean, is these things when we say these things?
Let me say this, Tommy, and I say it respectfully. I say it respectfully. And I think you'll agree with me. Don't compare yourself to a woman. Don't analogize yourself with the same mentality or actions as a woman. You're not a woman. I'm holding her to a far lesser standard. Women don't repent. Women don't repent. They admit no mistakes.
I wasn't saying that. I was saying I was using it as an example of something I knew directly, where I know if I sit around and kept doing it, the person would be like, well, my life is an example of where I am. That's why Jesus told the woman, go forth and sin no more. That was, he said there and told him, it's not her job to sit up here and talk in front of all of y'all. Y'all throw the first stone. The people who told you anything that I've done, did they tell you what they've done? So we had a good conversation, and you just think about it. And Jesus went against that whole idea of I'm sitting down talking to somebody and somebody walk up and tap Jesus on the shoulder. You know that's a hoe. You know they did so-and-so. Jesus said, no, I'm having a good conversation with them. How about that? But you didn't do that. You sit up there and listen to what people told you. So you wonder why I'm in the spot. Oh, I was in the spot I was in because people like you and everybody else decided to hear what somebody said, not what I said. And they used them to go and tell YouTube, knock him down. We don't like what he does. Knock him down. We don't like what he does. So you and I had a good show and somebody came and told you, great show, wonderful conversation, loved what the guy was saying. You know, he does OnlyFans. Well, what the hell do you do? That's what Jesus would ask every time somebody brought him some dirt.
So, but Tommy, again, I didn't have you on the show, but I certainly didn't do anything to harm you.
Well, you don't think that might be a harm?
What?
We know what media is. Tell me if it's not. What is media? Exposure. And every bit of exposure you get puts you in a better place. Every bit of exposure you don't get puts you back. It sets you back. And if you can have somebody, and whoever told you, if they saw it worked, you know what else they might do? Like when I did my movie, Tariq Nasheed wanted to be a part of my movie. When he decided he didn't like my movie, you need to make sure you go watch my movie. It's called The Fatherless America. I guarantee you'll like it. You can find it at afatherlessamerica.com or you can rent it at Amazon. Amazon got it rated a 4.9 out of 5. Great movie. Tariq Nasheed was all about it. Then he decided to dislike me. When he disliked me, he went over to Dr. Umar Johnson and said, don't do a show. Because Dr. Umar was supposed to already do my show. So I'm getting ready to sit up for Dr. Umar Johnson. He's like, I can't do it. And he wouldn't tell me why. Now you could say Tariq didn't hurt me. That man made a decision on his own. But if you got a person going around
Tariq hurt
people,
you. Tariq hurt you. That's a different analogy. I made a decision about what's best for my show.
Just like Umar did.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. The Umar part. Umar made a decision from hearing what Tariq said that he'll choose not to do my movie. You made a decision based upon what people told you to not have me in front of the audience.
And what I went and found for myself, it was backed up.
Yes, from what they told you.
Yes, but also, again, your willingness to beef with everybody is just like, well, I need.
Who is this everybody?
What I need another person
never
that,
called them
as soon as the deal's over. Tommy, damn near as soon as the deal was over, you were on your show already talking about me.
Oh, look at what you said. You were sitting there like right now. You don't see it. I guarantee you people see it. You throw shots and then we'll start out by saying, I don't mean to throw a shot. You do. You can watch this interview
Tommy,
right
if
now,
you
watch
listen to me, okay, listen, but if you listen to me, do you know how many shots I take at myself every day? Again, now I play rough. There's no question about it. This ain't for punks. I play rough.
So
I'm not a punk. Nobody that comes on the show can be a punk. Because again, if I don't play rough with you, it's probably a sign that I don't respect you.
So you justify playing rough, but then when the person responds to the roughness, you say, well, how is that? Like, seriously, if a person, I was always told this by my grandmom and granddad. If you slap somebody, you can't dictate how they'll respond.
I've never slapped you, Tommy. I've never slapped you.
You know that people's sensibilities are different, and you do know this. And that was another thing Jesus talked about. People's sensibilities are different. What you are offended by, somebody else might not be. And what you think shouldn't be offensive, they may think it is. We know this. That's why we take our shoes off in somebody else's house, but not in our own. But in our own, we just walk around with them on, or vice versa. We may think things are different. And so all I'm saying is, I didn't, as you say anything I said in response, I didn't say anything out of line. I didn't talk about how you look. I didn't talk about your mama, your daddy. I literally didn't say anything. You can't, if you believe what you did was soft, you have to say anything I said back was just as. And I was confused at you were saying something and I tried to explain to you what I was doing. And everything I said came to fruition about Kwame Brown. It did. And I'm sad. I think I still am, because I think a lot of what I said about him, I said it still from a point of love, because I kept saying, bro, here's what's going to happen if you keep doing it this way. I was able to say something to him that no one was able to say to me. And I kept telling him, and it happened. And I'm not happy it happened, and I don't mess with him no more. I don't talk to him. I don't pile on. I don't say I'm glad. I don't do any of that stuff. Why? because I know what it feels like to fail, to feel like I had it and lost it. And I don't take joy or revel in anybody's downfall or demise. They tried to get me to make videos about Kevin Samuels when he died. I didn't touch it. Why? Because death is going to hit us all. How is that a joke? I never understood it. Matter of fact, I defended him. Then they said, why are you defending Kevin? Y'all got beef. I said, no, I don't have beef. I kept trying to point out something. There's no beef in that. I said, but there's a problem when you got a woman, what was her name? I went on her TV show when she had it. 50 Cent's ex-girlfriend. What is her name? She was in Independence Day. Vivica Fox. When Vivica Fox went onto that Fox Soul and they said God took him out for what he said, you know we could never say nothing like that about a woman, no matter what she did. And yet she was able to say this about a man she didn't know because he said an opinion he didn't like. And that's what's crazy. Almost everything that happened to me was because I said an opinion that you didn't like. So you want to say something else and something else and something else. And the point is that people like me, they wouldn't care about that. Their pastors will get up in front of them and tell them, I used to pimp. And they still go there and throw money at him. Yet you want to come and say, you know, he did so and such. But he sounded good, but I don't want to hear anything else he says anymore. Well, that's crazy. That's who you should want to hear from. That's why you go to the doctor for people sick. You call the doctor because you're sick. If the doctor only hung out with people who were well, he'd be a horrible doctor.
So, I'm going to end it here, Tommy, or try to reach a conclusion here. And I hope that I express this accurately and in a way that people understand it. There were people when we started this show that, why you got Shamika Michelle on the show, Jason? You know, she's on the cover of her book naked and she used to be a stripper and blah, blah, blah. And I like Shamika Michelle and I have her on the show because I authentically believe she's going to represent herself and me in this show in a way that for the most part reflects the values of this show. And she's moved on from things in her past and she's, I won't say a different person, but that's the only thing I can think of to say at the moment. But again, I don't have a problem because I have a past. If I thought O.J. Simpson were a different person, was going to represent the show in a way consistent mostly with the values of this show, I'd have O.J. Simpson as a contributor to this show. And I know he committed double murder, or I believe he did. And anybody that knows me, and Uncle Jimmy, who was my sidekick for a lot of years, this dude got 5 kids and 4 baby mamas. And platformed him, elevated him, whatever, you know. And so I don't hold people's past against them. And I wasn't, but when I look at the whole package of like, and I don't want to belabor it anymore, but I just like, man, this dude's beefing with Kwame and he's saying Kevin Samuels stole his whole thing from him and he's got this OnlyFans deal, the whole thing, all of it just like, man, Whitlock, that's too high risk. Just don't. What's happened, just as life has played out, you've come on the Twitter spaces twice, and both times I'm like, dang, this dude is just cold, man. He says some amazing stuff. He's a brilliant broadcaster. And now we're talking about the manosphere, and he's an originator in the manosphere. Let me bring Tommy on and hear Tommy out. Let me introduce him to the audience. Let me hear how the audience responds to Tommy. And let me try to figure out, where's Tommy's head at now? What's he representing now? Does he have any discipline? Because trust me, if things go sideways, it won't be because of anything I did. And that's not me saying I'm a perfect person. It's just like I just go out of my way not to mistreat people or deal with them in a transparent fashion. Is he going to run off the rails and Whitlock is the worst person on the planet? I don't know, but we'll figure it out. But anyway, Tommy, I appreciate you coming on, and I'm gonna give you the final say on this whole thing, and then we'll play some tomorrow, and we'll see you guys tomorrow. So, Tommy, the floor is yours. Wrap up. Don't go too long. You can go 10 minutes sometimes. It's all good, but try to stay in the 2 to 3 to 4 minute range.
Well, that's fine. You say the whole idea of how, I give everybody a chance and everybody has a pass. The one thing you can't say is anywhere you've ever seen me, no matter if it was on Dave Rubin, no matter if it was on Vivica Fox, no matter if it was on almost everywhere I've been. But conversation's great. You don't hear me in there cussing or messing up, and I espouse things that are really, really good. So you put me in a situation and you tell me what the rules are, I pretty much follow them. I had you on my show and I was nothing but respect. It wasn't even like how my normal show is, because I don't go in and get to cussing and bring people on. That's why so many people have come on my show. It used to be called a place where celebrities go to let go. They would come to talk to me and I don't even know why. TD Jakes used to tell people to go listen to me. He literally thought I was really good. So that being said, all of your dealings with me were good. Everything you found bad was about someone else. All of your dealings with me personally, every other thing that you've seen me on someone else's show was good. I handled myself very professionally, including here. Now I'll get off this show and probably go on mine and let a couple F-bombs drop and whatever. Because like my grandmother always told me, was this. There was a person in the Bible, and they said when he went there, they said he doesn't normally eat that, but he ate that there just to show respect. Custom. When in Rome, when in Rome. I love what I do because I believe that this word that was given to me, most of the time when I'm talking, I don't even know where it's coming from. And I believe that there's a higher power that's giving it to me. I've gone through so much stuff to be able to just say what I believe is right. And if you bring me around anytime, anybody, my word travels. I will tell you what I think is right, even if it's wrong, even if it hits me. Matter of fact, most of the time when it hits me, because that's the best story to tell. So I appreciate you and anybody else who allowed me to be able to speak for myself, because most of the things I've ever lost in my life has been because people were speaking for me.
Thank you, Tommy. You guys watching, listening, hit the chats, hit the comments, tell me what you think. Hit me with an email, fearlessblazeshow@gmail.com. We'll play tomorrow. We'll see you tomorrow.
Waiting for the countdown, coming off the breakdown, standing in line for freedom. Looking for a breakout, feeling like a standoff, nothing in life like freedom. Came like a fighter, striking like a ladder, making all these moves for freedom. I want freedom. No negotiation, my sister, no relation. We all just wanna have freedom. Sitting on a corner, never been alone. I'm breaking my back for freedom. Blessed, we are living, get back. We are receiving, no deceiving. We all wanna be free. We want freedom.